Why don't we open that door all the way, Adya Prabhu? And would you like to sit by the door for a bit?
No, it's okay. I'm going to be a few minutes.
You're sure? Because that chair's got your name on it. Look at that. See that? Magic. Somehow or other worked out. You guys should spread out a little bit. You're sitting a little too close together for my comfort zone. I got something here you got to say, remind me later on. Look at it. And then get rid of it. Thank you. Just click remind me later. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Just before we begin today's discussion, are you guys familiar with the coronavirus? We'll find out. How many coronaviruses are there? No, it's because it was discovered in 2019. There's 7 coronaviruses, including the new one, SARS-CoV-2. There's 7 coronaviruses. 5 of them are relatively mild, including this one. 2 of them are very, very bad. SARS and MERS. Those 2 ones are very deadly. Mortality rates 10, 20%, stuff like that. It can get really bad. The other 5 are relatively, I don't want to say benign, but they're relatively mild, with a mortality rate of around 1% or 0.1%, depending on which one you're dealing with. The one we're talking about today, SARS-CoV-2, which is what causes COVID-19, the disease, that one, although it's got the name SARS, it's actually quite mild. And it's similar to the original coronavirus. The original coronavirus was created because of people doing factory farming. It was as was this one. There's zoonotic diseases. There's so many of them, and every once in a while they genetically morph, and then they become capable of infecting a human being. The first one they think happened on a chicken farm, and it happened during World War I. And it caused what's called the Spanish flu. Somehow we were hating on the Spanish. They had nothing to do with it. It was in the UK or in Kansas, but where it originated from. But somehow we called it the Spanish flu. And the Spanish flu killed, most probably, about 50 million people. 50 million people. That's a big number. It infected 500 million people. 1/3 of the world's population. And most of us have probably gotten the Spanish flu. It's still going around the world. Once they hit, they become endemic. They're with us forever. They don't go away. All the coronaviruses since the Spanish flu in 1917, 1918, 1718, they're all still around. And most of us in this room have gotten the Spanish flu. It's just like a regular flu. It's not that big of a deal. You get sick. Just like the coronavirus. Sometimes 80%, 85% of the cases, they're asymptomatic entirely. But when it's novel, when it's new, when nobody's gotten it, There's no genetic resistance to it, and so it really hits you heavy. That's what's happening now. The first one infected 1/3 of the world's population. That would be 2.5 billion people at this point. It killed 50 million people, which is about 3% of the world's population. Which now, if we did that, we'd be talking about tens of millions of people. If my math's right, it'd be 22.5 million people. It's no joke. It's like a big deal. No, it'd be more than that, because our population is multiplied by 225 million people. I was like, I did the math, and I went to a factor of 10 down. Actually, be 225 million people. And the way the Spanish flu hit, and this is for all you guys to understand, the way the Spanish flu hit was it rolled out in 1918, just in the aftermath of World War I, and it hit in the springtime. And some people got it, wasn't that big of a deal. Then it came back again in the fall, and that's when it killed 50 million people. So back in April, May, they were going to have 10,000 new cases in the U.S. in one day, and people were freaking out that we were in the belly of the pandemic. And we were. And everybody got ultra careful, and the result was that it went down. We flattened the curve. You know how many cases we had yesterday? 180,000. Now, a week ago, 7 days ago, we'd had 90,000 cases in one day, and they were saying, oh my God, it's going to be 100,000 cases in one day. 7 days later, it's 180,000 cases in one day. So it's like that exponential curve. That's what's happening now. People were freaking out in May, April, when you guys were all freaked out about it, and that was 1/20th the cases, new cases per day. Now it's 20 times worse, and it's getting cold. And people get the flu more when it's cold because it's more moist, and it kind of somehow or other it lingers. Actually, you know what? I'm wrong there. I'm sorry. It's drier in the wintertime, and therefore it lingers. In the summertime, it gets more humid, and so your spittle, in its aerobicized form, bonds to water molecules in the air and is more likely to fall to earth and then become much less likely to infect somebody. But in the wintertime, it's a little more dry, people stay indoors more, and things spread. So I don't want anybody to get the coronavirus, and I definitely don't want anybody to get it here. So keep your masks on. You don't need to text. It's not that important. Keep your mask. I'm looking at you, man. I'm looking straight at you. Distance as much as you can, and then you guys are going to have to decide what to do when people start coming in. We're pretty close to like the end of my comfort zone. That's fine. So just figure out what you want to do. Bring people in for darshan and have them leave. You guys made it early, so you guys get to hang. But if you want to leave, you can leave because we're starting to turn people away. They'll just come in for darshan and leave. Adi Prabhu is older, and so last thing we want to do is, or Prabhuji over here, we don't want any of the elder devotees sick. We don't want anybody to get sick, and we definitely don't want to become a hot spot. So keep your mask on, stay a little bit away from people, don't cough on anybody, and for the rest of the following weeks until things start to die down, be more careful than you were when you were losing your mind back in April, May, because things are 20 times worse than they were then. And there's no sign of things going down. They're continuing to skyrocket. They've doubled in 7 days. And it's going to get way worse because we're in the belly of the beast, And we're dealing with a fairly benign, not super dangerous version of the coronavirus, thank God. And we should expect that a lot more people are going to die, just like they did with the Spanish flu. And you want to run the numbers if we have a similar thing, and we won't because we have better health care than we did then. Most of those people died because of super infections, because they didn't have proper hygiene and they didn't have proper medical facilities. So we're doing a lot better, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. Okay, that was my public service announcement for you guys. Yes?
I had this. It is no joke.
He had the coronavirus. This is his son. His son came to me and said, hey, my dad's probably going to die, so please, when you go on the altar, say some prayers, because they were pretty sure Prahlad Priya, this nice devotee here, was going to die a couple of weeks ago. And so his son came here and gave me some incense and asked me to offer it on the altar and say prayers for Prahlad Priya, who was getting ready to leave the planet. And somehow or other it didn't happen. And
By the mercy of the devotee.
Somehow or other it didn't happen. I'm feeling really grateful about that. And he's still here, but we don't want to mess around. Because it's novel. So even if it's not that bad, tons of people are going to get sick and die. If you're fat, 50% more likely you're going to die from it. So go on a diet. If you're old, way more likely you're going to die, so try not to be old. Be young at heart. And just be careful. This kind of stuff happens. It actually plays really nicely into today's class. Today is Govardhan Puja. Govardhan Puja. There's a story associated with today. It's the centerpiece of today's celebration. So maybe we'll talk around the story for a quick minute, and then we'll tell the story, because that's what you're supposed to do on this day. You're supposed to listen to the story and derive meaning from it. The way Govardhan Puja is traditionally celebrated, it's a North Indian holiday. It's very popular in North India. It's not a pan-Indian holiday. You don't find it getting celebrated in the South. You don't find it getting celebrated in the East, like in Bengal. It's not a big deal. But in North India, it's extremely popular. In Vrindavan particularly, it's extremely popular. And the way it's celebrated is you build a replica of Govardhan Hill, which is an actual sacred mountain that exists to this day about 90 miles south of Delhi, southeast of Delhi. So Delhi is sort of central North India. It's where the Sultanate was located, where the Mughal Empire was located. It's the current capital of India, and it's kind of north-central India. And if you go south of Delhi and east of Delhi, Vrindavan's about 100 miles southeast of Delhi, and there's a town there called Govardhan. And at the center of the town, there's this big mountain. Not a big mountain, it's a relatively small hill. Maybe it's, 50, 70 feet high at its highest point, and maybe it's a couple of 100 meters wide at its widest point. And there's a road that goes right through it. So the hill comes up and it goes down, and then there's a road, like a national highway, and then there's a hill on the other side. And the hill's a good, solid 10 miles long. Maybe a little less. Maybe 8 to 10 miles long. We never cross that road. Jaidev! We never cross that road. We also never set foot on Govardhan Hill. The whole hill is a deity for us. And when I say it's a deity, I mean that, definitely, if you tried to make me put my feet on Govardhan Hill, I would either fight till you killed me or made me unconscious. But there's no way with me being conscious I would put my feet on Govardhan Hill. Not going to happen. We worship stones from the hill. That stone was given to me by my guru about 5 years ago. I worship it every day. It's on top of the little hill that I brought it in when I came in. And we worship the stones from the hill. It's like a deity that never gets closed. Like these doors close, and if you come at the wrong time, you won't see the deity. But Govardhan is there 24/7, right there. And for us, it is Krishna. We worship Govardhan as Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu initiated, or what do I want to say? Started, I guess initiated is fine. He initiated the worship of Govardhan Hill. He gave a Govardhan Shila to his disciple Raghunath Das Goswami, and he told him to worship it as Krishna in a very simple way. You offer 8 soft tulsi leaves, tulsi manjaris, with a leaf on each side, and a soft manjari, which is like a little sprout. I don't know what the English equivalent is of a manjari. And so, when a plant is going to seed, that seed bud initially is very soft, and then if it hardens, it forms seeds. But initially, it's a very soft extension of the plant. Certain plants like this, they go to seed like this. And so that bud, 8 of those, and water. And you worship Govardhan like that. It's very, very simple worship. Then he gave what's called a gunjamala, which is red and white colored seeds off another plant. And he gave a string of those, and he said that you should worship with that. And that's usually considered to be Radharani. And so the deity complete is Radharani as a necklace circling Krishna, which is the stone. On our altar, we have a Govardhan Shila. If you look on the right side of the altar, next to Baladev, on the left side of Baladev, you can see a stone with 2 eyes on it. That's a Govardhan Shila. They're deities for us. The whole mountain is a deity for us. We walk around the mountain, and if you go to India, you go to Govardhan, like even now, you'll find sadhus walk around the mountain every day, which is about 20 kilometers to walk around the mountain every day. So it's, a 15-mile hike. They'll do it in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's like a pilgrimage. They walk around the mountain, and they become blessed by circumambulating the mountain, by walking around it. Then you find sadhus in our tradition also prostrate themselves before the mountain. Sometimes 1,000 or 2,000 times a day. That was very common for devotees in our lineage to offer several thousand full prostrate obeisances. They lay down, get up, lay back down again, get up, lay back down again, a couple thousand, 2,000, 3,000 times as part of their daily ritual. Then you find devotees will prostrate themselves all the way around the mountain. So they'll offer their obeisances fully, laying down like a stick, and then they'll stand up and walk to where their hands were. And then they'll put their feet where their hands were, and then they'll stretch out again. And they'll go all the way around the mountain, prostrate themselves. That takes 3 weeks. That takes 3 weeks. And you camp out. Then you find some devotees prostrate themselves 108 times at each spot. And they have a pile of stones. And they pick up a stone, and then they lay down, and they put the stone up by their head, and then they move up, and where their head was, their feet are, and they pick up the stones again to count. And they go 108 times offering their prostrations around the hill. That takes 2 months. This has been done by millions of our saints for hundreds of years, generation after generation. It's a sacred place for us. It's also a physical location. So if you go to Govardhan, you'll see government signs on the highway that says Govardhan, 10 kilometers. And it's the actual name of the town as well as the name of the mountain. I've always thought about stealing one of those signs and taking it home. It would be like a really cool piece of art. But I'm a law-abiding citizen. I haven't quite built up the nerve. Anyway, let's see what happens. So it's a sacred place for us. And it figures very prominently into our ritual and our lifestyle and our tradition of pilgrimage. And has for... Okay. Govardhan Puja, Vardhan comes from Vard, which means to expand. And so Govardhan means the thing which expands, go, or the pleasure of go. It expands, and so go means cows, primarily. Goloka, Krishna's planet, is a planet of cows, which sounds like Planet of the Apes, so I normally don't say it, but it's literally what Goloka means, planet of the cows. Our conception of divinity is that we have a classical conception of God, which is called Vishnu. Vishnu is extremely powerful. He's humanoid, and being humanoid is pretty important because can you deeply love and fall deeply in love with and have a reciprocal relationship, a deep one, with a non-human? The answer is no, you just haven't thought about it enough. Because if something is non-human, then you can't relate to it, and being able to relate to something is important for love. Being able to empathize and relate and also receive love. You can love a dog, no doubt. You can love a microbe, no problem. But the intensity with which we're able to love human beings is exponentially greater. God has to at least be humanoid, human-like, in order for us to have deep and profound love. Vishnu's not quite human-like. He's got 4 arms, and he's really big and powerful, and he's brilliantly effulgent, like thousands of suns rising at the same time. And so usually if you see Vishnu, you have a beatific moment. You fall down, you offer prayers, you feel yourself to be very fallen and lowly, and you supplicate and ask for blessings and ask for forgiveness. The classical conception of God, what everybody thinks of when they think of God. We have a name for that deity. The name of that deity is Vishnu. From Vish, the one who enters into everything and thereby maintains everything. Krishna is a different notion of divinity. It's all that and then more. Like if you get the premium model of a car, then it gets you all the things that are there in the lower models of a car and then extra stuff too. You follow? That's usually the way they work it. So Krishna is the premium model of divinity in our tradition. He comes with all the benefits of Vishnu and none of the deficits. Krishna is human-like because you can fall in love with Krishna. Krishna is so beautiful, you forget he's God. Because if there's too much of a hegemony, a power differential between you and the object of your love, it's not really intimate love. Formality, power, position, these things are the enemy of intimacy. Krishna is so beautiful, you fall in love with Krishna. Falling in love with Krishna necessitates forgetting Krishna's divinity. Krishna is an intimate notion of divinity. All the power of Vishnu, but with the added possibility of embracing and kissing and dancing with and caring for. Some angels think Krishna is their child. They suckle Krishna from their breast. They care for, protect Krishna. What's going on here? I don't think this has to happen. You can prepare it all out there and then bring it in. There's no need for all this. It's disturbing my mind. Thank you. Vishnu, his power and his position and his greatness cripples the idea of embracing or caring for him, because he clearly needs absolutely nothing from you. That type of one-way love where you have nothing to offer but everything to receive doesn't create intimacy or reciprocation. And whatever reciprocation, intimacy is there, it's not intimacy. It's formal, and it's very, very circumscribed and very attenuated and very crippled. Krishna, you can fall in love with. Krishna's devotees oftentimes think Krishna's their child or their friend. Sometimes Krishna's friends wrestle with Krishna and defeat him. They'll steal his lunch. Balaram, his older brother, will have dreams where Krishna's in danger, and he'll wake up and jump out of bed and start running out the door to protect his brother, having a nightmare that his brother's in some danger. Krishna will serve his parents, carrying his father's shoes on his head to bring them to his father so his father can go out. We consider this intimately available, intimately lovable deity to be infinitely greater than Vishnu. It's Vishnu plus. So, there's a corner of heaven. We call it the planet of the cows. In that place, Krishna disports himself on equal terms with his loving angels and enjoys pastimes that would make most residents of heaven faint. They embrace Krishna. They kiss Krishna. They dance with Krishna. They suckle Krishna. They feed him. They cook for him. They bathe him. They play and frolic with him. There's a place, there's a corner of heaven which is reserved for devotees who are madly in love with God. The name of that deity is Krishna, the all-attractive one, where Krishna's attractiveness overwhelms his opulence. Sometimes that tribe descends to earth and puts on a display of what's possible in terms of loving God, so that we, who otherwise would never be able to even think of such a possibility, we can get a roadmap. We can model ourselves after these people. We can learn about their love. We can appreciate the depth of it, become attracted to it, and we can also follow in their footsteps. When that tribe comes down to this world, they bring that corner of heaven with them, and that becomes the sacred land of Vrindavan. The most important place in the sacred land of Vrindavan is Govardhan. It's a special place because all the different devotees who all have their own unique relationship with Krishna at one time got together, and that was for this festival. You never hear about this, ever. But there was one place, one time, when all the Brijbasis, with their romantic and fraternal and parental and servitude love of Krishna, they all got together. And they were in one place at one time, doing kirtan together. Normally when Krishna goes out with the cowherd boys, the gopis stay behind. When Krishna's with the gopis, the cowherd boys and his parents are not there. When Krishna's with his parents, he's at home, and the cowherd boys and the gopis are not there. But this was the one time when they all got together. So we're going to tell a story, but the story isn't really a story. The story is a portal or a glimpse into what is possible in terms of the soul-loving God. And so with the skeleton with the basic ideas we just presented, you should be able to appreciate the story and the depth of it and the profundity of it, and not mistake the story for being a tale. But you'll be able to understand the deep and profound truth of the story and the incredible insight it gives you into the nature of what's possible in terms of how you can love God. For us, the highest echelon of heaven looks kind of like an agrarian Indian village where God lives in a joint family with all of his devotees. And so one day, the devotees there were preparing to do a yearly ritual to honor Indra. One of the features of Vrindavan, this corner of heaven, is that they worship a polytheistic pantheon of deities. And then Krishna regularly makes them just worship him, but kind of like unknowingly. It's kind of like they're constantly teaching us monotheism by moving from polytheism to monotheism, the same way the Jews moved the Babylonians and Egyptians from polytheism to monotheism. In a similar way, you find that evolution taking place in Vrindavan with Krishna and his devotees in a very sweet way. You know, it's like there's all those plagues that had to happen with the Jews. You know, it's like all this kind of like fighting and like, you know, killing the idol worshippers and so on and so forth, or killing the monotheists who didn't worship the idols. And so it happens in a way sweeter way in Vrindavan. But it's the same idea of what transpires. So one day, Krishna's father and the elder clansmen of their community of cowherds, they were preparing a yearly sacrifice to Indra. Indra is the god of rain, a very, very big deity in the Rig Veda. In the oldest Vedic texts, Indra is a big deity, powerful deity. And so they were preparing a yajna, a sacrifice to Indra. They were going to build fires and chant mantras and offer various dairy products to Indra to ensure a successful rain cycle, and so that their cows could eat grass and they could grow crops and so on and so forth. Krishna jumped in the scene and said, he did like a Jedi mind trick, and he said, you should not worship Indra. The hill is giving us everything we need. Just worship the hill. So he moved backwards from polytheism to animism and said, just worship the mountain. All the things you were going to offer, just offer them to the mountain. The mountain is what gives us our rivers and our foliage and nice grass for the cows to graze on and fruits. Just offer everything to the mountain. And so his father said, okay, son. And important, Krishna started off, he said, is this in the Shastra? Is this in the scriptures? Or is it just a local custom? As far as it's a local custom. Indicating the truth that worshiping demigods is not actually what is taught in the Vedic literatures. It's like a little nuance, but there's all sorts of these the story's chock full of all of these kind of nuances. These are lessons if you have the eyes to see them. So Krishna said, I want you to make a bunch of soups, supanta, and I want you to make a bunch of payas, I want you to make a bunch of sweet rice, and I want you to make a bunch of all the milk and yogurt and ghee in our village, and I want you to make cakes, and I want you to cook, samosas and kachoris and things like that. And so they made a massive feast. Now you can see what we do. We made a hill out of sweets. That's very common. Actually, a step up from that, in my opinion, would be if we did a hill out of sweets and savories. So you had like samosas and you had sweets. I've never done it before, but I just thought of it now because it's actually part of the festival. And so you do normally what we do, we make a big hill out of sweets. That's not what's done in India, traditionally. Traditionally in India, you make a deity of Krishna out of cow dung. And then you hollow out the belly of the deity and you fill the belly with sweets. Cow dung is not considered to be a dirty thing. It's like, I got sick. I don't know if I'm going to tell this whole story, but I got hepatitis A from drinking some bad water in Andhra Pradesh. I was in the middle of nowhere. I was going to die of starvation. I drank out of a well. It was suspect. I knew I was going to get sick. 8 weeks later, I'm in Singapore. I got deathly ill. They told me it was going to be 2.5 months before I could do anything. I got full-blown jaundice. My eyes were completely brown, or whatever the white part of your eye is, was completely brown. I was urinating dark brown urine. I could not stand up for more than about 5 seconds. It took me maybe an hour or two to make it to the bathroom just to urinate. I had no strength, no appetite. Weirdly, with jaundice, sweet things taste sour. I'd always read about that in our scriptures, but I didn't believe it. So I ate sugar. I had the presence of mind, I got to test this out. So I ate some sugar. It tasted like lemons. It was totally bizarre. I went to the hospital in Singapore. They're like, you're done. 2.5 months. Just get used to it. I was like, forget that. I jumped on a plane. I went to India. They weren't going to let me on the plane. I had to freak out. It was back in the 90s when you could freak out, muscle your way onto a plane. I got on, that's actually, back in the mid-90s. I got on a plane. I flew to India and went to Vrindavan and then went and saw the local tantric there. He had me come to his house at 5:30 in the morning in the freezing cold in a pair of Copans, underwear, and he beat me with peacock feathers and yelled at the disease to leave my body and poured water on me. I'm not making this up. This happened. I got witnesses. I wasn't alone. And I'm forgetting his name. He passed away some years back. I'm forgetting his name. He was a local tantric, Vaishnav tantric. I sat in his courtyard in front of his deity. He had a deity at his house, and he yelled at his deity to cure me, and then what's it called? What do you call that? Exorcise the disease. And he had me rub my body with mango bark and poured water on me, and then yellow was coming off my body. And he was like, see, the disease is leaving you. And I'm like, dude, this is mango bark. Look, it's just it's yellow. It's like rubbing a yellow highlighter on you. It doesn't mean anything, you know? And then he made me drink cow dung. He mixed cow dung and cow urine together, gave it to me in a bottle and said, drink this and you'll be cured by tomorrow. There's no cure for hepatitis A. And so I went and drank the cow dung, and cow urine mixed together, and the next day I was completely cured. 100% cured, like magic. I woke up the next day. I asked him, what should I eat, for my bad day? Because you should eat pakoras and halva, which it's like French fries and ice cream, essentially. And he was right. The next day I was completely fine. My appetite totally returned. I had lost maybe 15 pounds in the 10 days or so it took me to get to Vrindavan. And I was cured one day. So anyway, cow dung is considered to be, they use it for fuel, they line their houses with it. There's a whole bunch of studies, it's antiseptic and this and that and the other thing. And so you make a deity out of cow dung, which is not the same as making a deity, let's say, out of dog stool or something like that. And you hollow out the stomach and you fill that with sweets. We don't do that here for just hygiene reasons. It's way out of people's comfort zone. So we make a hill out of sweets. So anyway, they made a mountain of sweets and savories and subjis, and they offered it all to the mountain. And then Krishna became another mountain on top of the mountain with arms that began eating the offerings to increase their faith. This happens sometimes in the life of a devotee. Krishna will appear to you in a miraculous way, in a magical way, and increase your faith and nourish you and help you grow. So Krishna did that. And then Krishna, standing there, making the offerings, pointed up and said, look, it worked. But it was him, standing in another form, eating the offerings. And the people were like, wow, that's amazing. And then they all started doing a kirtan, and they started walking around the hill together. And that's the origin of our festival. the mountain of edibles, the walking around the mountain. Very, very simple worship. And so they did this. They also fed everybody. So they found what everybody needed and they gave that to them. We do this as devotees. We find out what somebody needs, whether it's emotional support or if they need help, even with employment or dealing with past traumas or whatever it might be. And we surgically go in and try to serve them and help them by giving them what they need, whatever it might be. We don't limit ourselves. And so the cows got their grass. And the brahmanas were given, remunerations. And everybody was given what they needed to prosper. And then they did a big kirtan. And Indra got upset. Indra got upset. And so he sent the clouds of destruction, the Samvartak. He sent them to destroy Vrindavan. And so all of a sudden, everybody's having this happy gala celebration where they're, doing kirtan together and feeding each other and feeling so much love. And Krishna's at the center of it all. And all of a sudden, clouds come rolling in. Dark, black, ink black clouds come rolling in. And it starts raining and thundering. And there's hail. And you can't even distinguish high and low ground. Like if you look in North Carolina, they just had floods in North Carolina. Our temple in Mayapur is flooding right now because after the monsoon season, the Ganga fills up, the ice pack melts, and it all rushes to the Bay of Bengal. And so the whole area flooded. And when it floods, you can't tell, like the hills disappear, and it's all just underwater. It's all just underwater. And this wasn't like a rainstorm. This is like the end of the universe rainstorm. And everybody was going to die. Indra was going to kill everybody. This pastime doesn't take place in Golok per se. It takes place in Gokula. It takes place in this world when Krishna comes to perform his pastimes. It's one of the special pastimes that takes place for us to see that doesn't actually perpetuate in heaven. The sentiments of the festival do perpetuate in heaven, but there's no actual danger that ever occurs. That's a little complicated. I'm going to skip it just because we're running out of time. But certain pastimes just take place in Gokula, in this world. They don't take place in Golok, in the spiritual world. They don't take place in heaven. They take place when heaven comes to this world. Because when heaven comes to this world, people who are coming up towards heaven mix with people who come down to pick them up, and it creates a really interesting phenomenon. And you get special pastimes that don't occur anywhere else. Anyway, so everyone was going to die. Everyone was going to die. And the cows, the calves, do we have a mask for her? Can we get a mask for her? Still going to get you one. The cows, their calves were run out there, find them, get them, quick. I know you got one. Hey, tell your dad we got a mask for her. Tell your dad we got a mask for your sister. Okay, don't worry about it. We're good. Okay. So the calves were just getting pelted with hail. And so they sought protection under their mothers' bodies. And so the mothers, they took those hailstones on their body to protect their younger children. And the bulls were so angry, they were like defiantly like taking their tusks and pointing them up in the sky, like to try and pierce the clouds. And all the Brijbasis were afraid of drowning. And so although they loved Krishna like a child, and usually they're thinking about what they can do for Krishna instead of what Krishna can do for them. And they're thinking about what Krishna might need from them instead of what they need from Krishna. Which is why we have to forget Krishna as God, because otherwise you're too busy asking for stuff. But when you start thinking of Krishna as your child, you start thinking about what Krishna needs, and it makes you selfless. So although that's what happens in Goloka 99% of the time, there's one exception to that rule. And that is that everybody takes shelter of Krishna when they need help. And so in their moment of fear and doubt and turpitude, they cried out, "Krishna, please save us." And Krishna, although he was manifesting his sweet side, his vulnerable side, his intimately lovable side, his power is actually never gone. It's always still there. And so at that critical moment in the life of the Brijbasis, who just wanted to love Krishna as their family member, at that critical moment when they needed help, they cried out to Krishna because above all things, they are devotees of Krishna. And so when you cut them down to their core, they take shelter of Krishna. That may manifest as loving Krishna intimately, but the same basic principle of being devoted to God is always there. And that principle manifests differently at various stages of life. And so at this moment, when they needed help, they cried out to Krishna. Just stay in one place, please. Thank you. It's hard for me to process and think. I'm trying to make some points. It gets really hard for me. My mind is not so powerful. I can just have a bunch of stuff going around in my periphery. I'm just going to say it again. Although in our corner of heaven, the chosen corner of heaven for our people, we love Krishna like a child and just ask what we can do for Krishna, not what he can do for us. And we have to forget his divinity so we don't ask for anything material. And we think of him as being, in like a lot of ways, our junior. The core of that manifested sentiment is ultimately the same pure devotion to God that is also there in heaven that makes people surrender their lives and pray to Krishna for things. And so what happens is most of the time devotees are doing things for Krishna, but in those few moments in their life where they have no other shelter, they cry out to Krishna more intensely than anybody for help. Even though they don't think he's God, it's natural for them. It's their core. It's their identity. In that sense, there's not a different type of love. It's all the regular love plus some special accoutrements. Did you follow that? Ryan? Did that make sense? It's clear, right? Okay. So, they cried out to Krishna. And Krishna became filled with the intense desire to protect his devotees. And he rushed to Govardhan and immediately picked the entire mountain up with his left hand, like a child might pick up a mushroom, like an elephant might pick up a lotus flower with his trunk, not even with his right hand, his left hand, and just immediately picked it up. And the entire hill rose up and became like an umbrella. And it immediately created a safe haven for all the people. And it wasn't just a safe haven. By Krishna's mystic opulence, there was another Vrindavan under the hill. And when he picked up the hill, boulders fell off and created like a moat around it, so no water could get in. And it was completely dry. Krishna didn't even get wet when he ran through the rain. His turban wasn't disheveled at all. He was completely looking perfect. And he said, everybody, look, it's nice in here, come on inside. And everybody thought, oh, there's not enough room under there. And then Govardhan made himself much, much bigger. And there was a whole spiritual world under there. And all the devotees went under there. And they all sat with Krishna, who held the hill, and they all looked at Krishna. And Krishna managed to, by his opulence, look at each one of them simultaneously, so each one of them felt like they were just looking at Krishna. And they thought it was only for a half an hour, but it was actually for 7 straight days. Nobody ate, nobody was thirsty, nobody was hungry, and they just sat there enraptured, in love with each other. And they just communed with one another. And all of these devotees' hearts felt desire was fulfilled, and they were able to just see Krishna and just be with Krishna. It was just Krishna and them. There's all sorts of other stuff that happened. There's a whole other class I could give on what happens during those 7 days under the hill. And somehow, despite the fact Krishna was performing this miracle, they just forgot about it and just thought, we're going to help Krishna hold up the hill. They picked up their sticks and helped Krishna hold the hill. He's like a young boy, we'll hold it up. And so all the cowherd men had their cowherd sticks, and they were holding up the hill because they thought Krishna's a young boy. We are strong men, we'll hold up the hill. So even in the face of these miracles, their sweet, intimate love for Krishna could not be obstructed. Indra saw what happened, realized he'd messed with the wrong Prabhu, and he cut and ran. The clouds dispersed. Everybody came out. Everything was beautiful again. There was no damage. There was no problem. And then Indra came and said, I thought I was in charge, and I made offenses to you, and I'm sorry. And Krishna said, yeah, you forget. You got puffed up. You became a little powerful. You became a little opulent. And then you forgot. And so I humbled you, not because I'm angry, but because I want you to do everything you do as a service to me and not think you're actually in charge of the whole show. Indra begged forgiveness. They bathed Krishna with Ganga Jal from the trunk of Airavat, Indra's elephant. Surabhi was there as a mediator between Indra and Krishna. She bathed Krishna with the milk from her udder, from the divine Surabhi cow. And then they gave Krishna the name Govinda, which means the nourisher of the cows. But etymologically, the name Govinda really probably means Go Indra, the lord of the cows. And so it's almost like Krishna got given the name of the ultimate Indra. It became shortened to Govinda. And so Krishna's famous as Govinda from this story, that he nourishes his devotees, he nourishes the cows, he takes care of his devotees. And there's so many lessons we learn from this story. We learn that something which might seem very bad at a certain time actually becomes a blessing. To the Brijbasis, it seemed like it was terrible. But what actually ended up happening was something infinitely better than what was going on before. They all got together and take shelter of Krishna. And they were all able to enjoy pastimes of Krishna, all individually and collectively in one place at one time. Krishna's always there to protect his devotees. Reversals become blessings. You should only worship Krishna. You should be simple in your devotion. You shouldn't get twisted up. You should trust that devotees do go through hard times. And the measure of a devotee is that in those difficult times they take shelter of Krishna and no other. They don't run to material things. That whatever power we have, we should realize where it comes from. Whatever intelligence we have, we should realize where it comes from. We shouldn't force Krishna to chastise us in order to teach us. There's so many nice lessons that you learn from the story. And this story is extremely popular, extremely famous. When devotees hear it, they feel great love for Krishna and great confidence in Krishna. And they feel great confidence to navigate this world. And so whether it's a pandemic like what we're dealing with now, or whether it's a deluge like what they're dealing with in North Carolina, which becomes way worse than a pandemic for them, or a flood, or fire. I mean, it's like right out of the apocalypse. It's like there's fires, there's floods simultaneously. Whatever's happening in the world, the basic lesson of this story remains a constant for devotees. We're actually not afraid of death. If it was your time to go, were you worried about it? You weren't worried about it, right? We're not afraid of death. We're not like trying to jump into a lake of fire or something like that. But when it's our time, we'll go with grace. We spend our lives realizing that we're not the body. We spend our lives cultivating a relationship with Krishna which goes beyond time. When it comes time to really step into that, we're ready. As long as we're here, we won't do anything which is foolhardy. We won't do anything which is foolish. But we're not afraid of death. We actually have faith in Krishna. Real faith. We're anchored to that faith. It doesn't go anywhere. It just grows over time. And whatever life throws at us, we just turn towards Krishna. Something good happens, we don't get intoxicated. We turn towards Krishna. Something bad happens, we don't get bewildered. We turn towards Krishna. As long as we're here, we do some service, we're responsible, we help other people be responsible. But when it's our time, it's not that big of a deal. We're not materialists. We're spiritualists. We're devotees. We're touching something beyond this world. And it emboldens us and empowers us to bravely do what the Brijvasis did. Take shelter of Krishna. Have confidence in Krishna. Amazingly, these realizations can go hand in hand with ecstatic love of Krishna that makes you forget his divinity. Amazingly, these type of realizations, these basic core realizations, flow together very nicely with ecstatic love for Krishna that even makes you forget his divinity. And we can bounce backwards and forwards between those two revelations while we're in this world until we eventually go to that world and we just settle into Krishna being our family member. Here's a verse. There's 4 chapters in the Bhagavad that detail this story. Here's one of them. Deve Varshati, when Indra, Varshati, he made it rain. Yagya Viplava Rusha, out of anger at the disruption of his yagya. When Indra made it rain out of anger at the disruption of his yagya. Vadrashma, Varshanilai, with wind and rain and thunder and rain stones. What are rain stones? Hail. Yeah, it's a cool word. Ashma Varsha, rain stones. So Krishna made it rain because he was upset that his yagna, his sacrifice, was disrupted. And so he made it rain with powerful winds and lightning, Vajra, and Anilaya with winds, and also with Ashma Varsha, with hailstones. Dristva, having seen this, Dristva Anukampi, Utsmayan, smiling with compassion. Anukampa means to shake for another. Krishna says in the Gita, Tesham evanukampartam. Compassion, compassion, to feel with somebody, to suffer with somebody. The word passion was introduced in the English language from the Passion of the Christ. That's where the word comes from. It's Latin. It's from the Passion of the Christ. It's how it entered into language. It was describing Jesus' suffering on the cross. Compassion literally means to suffer with somebody. Very similar to sympathy, to feel with somebody. But passion communicates suffering with somebody. In Sanskrit, that's communicated as anukampa, to shake with someone, to shake for someone. So Krishna was anukampi utsmayan. He was smiling, filled with compassion. He felt for his devotees. Krishna loves all of us and feels for us. And so what did he do? So Indra was angry. He was making it rain. He was destroying the universe. And Krishna was filled with compassion for us, seeing it. And so he smiled, and what did he do? Utpatyaika karena shailam abala. He picked up the mountain as if like a child would pick up a mushroom. Like as a mushroom growing, you just pick it up. That's how he picked up the mountain. Lilo chil indram yata. He picked up the mountain just as a child would pick up a mushroom. Bibrad gosham. Bibrat gosham. And he held that. Apan. And he invited everyone while he was holding it to come. All his friends. Goshtam. Apan. He invited them all to come underneath. Mahendra matbit. And he broke Indra's pride. Priya no Indra Gavan. May that Lord of the cows, may that Gava Indra, may that Lord of the cows be pleased. He, Maha Indra, Maha Indra, the great Indra, right? Mahendra, Madabit, he broke his pride. Mud means pride or arrogance or insanity. Bit, he broke his pride. Who broke his pride? Indra Gava, the Lord of the cows, Krishna. Nahapriya, may he be pleased with us. When Indra became angry that his sacrifice had been disrupted, and he made it rain and with lightning and wind and hail, Krishna, filled with compassion, smiling for his devotees, picked that mountain up in his hand the same way a child would pick up a mushroom, and invited them all to take shelter underneath, all of his people take shelter underneath. And also he broke the pride of Indra. He's clever. Krishna was able to do one thing, teach Indra a lesson, love his devotees and protect them, all at the same time. May that Lord be pleased with us. May he also protect us in the same way. May he also nourish and look after us and feel for us in the same way. Of course, Krishna feels for all of us. Just like a rain cloud rains everywhere. But if you stay indoors or under an umbrella, or if you stay in a cave, like with Plato's analogy of the cave, if you stay in the cave, then even though it's raining all around you, and the rain is for you, you won't experience it. Similarly, although God's grace may be there for all of us, and Krishna's protection and love may be there for all of us, although it might not look the way we think it's going to look, and we may need to go through some suffering in order to learn the lessons we need to learn. But although Krishna's mercy is there for all of us, and we can feel it, we can experience it, if we stay in the cave like a fool and refuse to come out in the sun, then we won't experience it, even though it's meant for everybody. And so those are special because they become receptive to this love, and therefore they're able to experience it. We hear that story, we learn these lessons, we celebrate with this rituals, and we follow in the footsteps of our tribe. And we have the same realizations they do. And we walk with them as we circumambulate Govardhan and venerate Govardhan. We also follow in their footsteps back to Godhead. And we become receptive to Krishna's grace. Okay. That ends the discussion. We're now going to remove the hill. Actually, we're doing okay for the amount of people here. I don't know. I need Jayadev quickly. You can end this.